If I were to tell you that the topic of politics has gotten a bit ugly over the years, you'd probably respond with, yeah, no duh. I think it's pretty clear by now that people are just so die-hard about their political opinions, and they are up to fight and insult anybody who disagrees with them. But how did we get to this point? It wasn't nearly this bad 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. But something seems to have changed in all of us over the years. I know a lot of people might chalk it up to just be one thing or another. A lot of people like to say that things weren't this bad before Trump, and once we get rid of him, things will all go back to normal, we'll all be nice to each other again. But when you really face reality, things were getting bad even before he showed up, and they're gonna continue to get worse whether he sticks around or not. But the thing is, people like to come up with the most simple solution, because those are the ones that seem the easiest to solve. You know, once we just get rid of the one person, then things go back to normal. But I think this is a much more complicated, in-depth issue that has a lot of contributing factors. So let's start off by just looking back in time about 20 years. So before the internet, everyone got their news from pretty much the same places. I mean, sure, you would pick your favorites depending on your political party, but for the most part, all of the news stations were mostly saying about the same things. And so when you have everyone hearing the same message, and most people don't have any reason not to believe the message, it's pretty easy for everybody to sort of stay on the same page, and even if you disagree here and there, for the most part, everyone is still mostly aligned. However, with the rise of the internet, of course, there are a lot of new problems that have come from this. The first one being that everyone can get their news from a completely different source. In the age of the internet, everybody has a voice. Anybody can say anything they want out in public, and it's very easy for their message to spread around. So you might have one news outlet saying one thing, and another outlet saying the complete opposite thing. And of course you'll have one side saying, oh, science supports my claims, and then the other side says, no, there are studies that support my claims. And like I said, everybody has a voice on the internet, any bit of information can spread far and wide, and it really just comes down to you picking a side based on who you want to believe. So in my opinion, that was the first real step that caused all of this chaos. Well, then you move into the second part, and that is the epidemic of echo chambers. So once people have decided what they want to believe, and they've started following all the people that tell them what they want to hear, then you start getting these communities growing all over the internet. Now back before the internet, let's say you had some really fringe, political extremist ideas, but the only people you could really talk to or exchange those ideas with are the people around you in your general area. And so if you have some extremist view, you're much less likely to actually run into somebody else that has that view. Therefore, all of the fairly more normal people around you are probably going to chastise you in some way, potentially preventing people from becoming more extreme. But with the rise of the internet, now that person with that crazy idea can now find a community of tons of people who all have that crazy idea, and then they feed off of each other, and they grow. And then what they're talking about feels so normalized that they feel like they can just keep pushing it further and further. And so when you become so desensitized to your own extremism, then nothing seems extreme to you anymore. You feel like you could just keep going further and further. And not only are these echo chambers a place for these extremists to meet each other and become even more extreme, of course they're always going to reach out to try and find other people to join their community too. Because, like I said, what news do you believe? There's contradictory information everywhere. One site says one thing, another news source says another thing. So if some community comes out to you and they say something like, oh, look at how bad the world is, well, we have a solution, we can fix it. Now just join us and we'll make the world a better place. So then inevitably you have these extremist groups just growing bigger and bigger. But now let's move on to part 3 of this whole thing, and that is the lack of consequences. Now, a common thing a lot of people talk about is road rage. You know, you're sitting in your car, and somebody cuts you off, and you're perfectly willing to just yell obscenities, you know, flip them off, freak out, do all sorts of things that you would never do face-to-face with somebody, most likely. And I've come to realize that the reason that it's so easy to just insult somebody or yell at somebody over the internet or in a car is because you're safe from any kind of consequences. Now, if you were out in public and you happen to just see somebody who was talking about something that you disagreed with, if you were to just go up to them and start freaking out and screaming in their face and insulting them, like, you're probably going to be met with some form of consequences. You know, maybe it's other people intervening, coming to try and stop you, or maybe it's just your own conscience of seeing what's happening to the person that you're insulting. However, when you have the protection of the internet on your side, or you are sitting in a car, there's basically no consequences. You can just sit there, say anything you want to this person. Oh, this person's famous, he gets thousands of messages a day, let's just send him all of the hate in the world. It's just a normal thing, nothing's gonna happen to me. And so it's become just so normalized for anybody to just say anything's on their mind, just completely cut the filter, just be as nasty as possible. And not only that, but I feel like the average level of empathy across our society has been going down over the years too. Because when you got the internet, you got so many people to pick from, you got so many people to talk to, so why bother putting an investment into people that are close to you? You know, if somebody has a differing opinion than you can just be like, alright, well, see ya, you're not my friend anymore, I'll go find other friends that agree with me. So the internet's made it much more accessible for you to find people out there, but it's also kind of made it harder to keep close connections with people, because the easier it is to find friends, it's just as easy to lose them. And so that's why it's so common for people now to just give up on friendships at the first sign of disagreement. So if you pull all of this stuff together, you have people that don't know what to believe because they're hearing different information all over the place. So then you have a lot of people that find a tribe and just pick sides, and then stay in those echo chambers long enough to become more radicalized. Then you have people that are just losing all sense of empathy and are just perfectly willing to throw out any insult that comes to mind. And then they're perfectly willing to give up on friends and family members. So I feel like we're all just trapped in this endless downward spiral where it's only getting worse day after day. And the worst part is, if you just take a step back, you can see that everyone is kind of fighting even though we don't really disagree that much. The whole discussion of politics is just people as a collective trying to decide what's the best way to benefit everybody. And ironically, people quite literally fight to the death to push their ideology in a way that's supposed to benefit society, while in reality it's all just tearing everything apart. Now there's really only one way that we could even possibly reverse this, and I don't really see it happening, and that's just that we've got to chill out a little bit, just talk to each other. You can still talk about your opinions, but maybe talk more about a compromise and try to be reasonable. But I think that that's all kind of wishful thinking. And with this being election week, I feel like the next few weeks, if not months, if not years, are going to get pretty ugly. But hopefully things will work out in the end. Sorry this was kind of a dark video, but obviously this is something that's being talked about a lot right now. It's on everybody's mind, it's all over all of the news. Honestly, it's pretty hard to avoid, and I really just hope that people can stop going crazy because it's just going to cause our own downfall in the end. But I guess we'll see what happens.